nice quick break, I'm very, very happy to welcome you all back to our Africa at Scale conference. And the title of this session is Firmly Holding Our Place in the World as Africans, a really powerful topic, and I am extremely honored to welcome a very special speaker to this conference in order to deliver her thoughts on this theme. The speaker we are now welcoming is Dr. Obi Ezekwesili. Dr. Obi, I hope you can hear and see me now so that we can start engaging.
Hi, Yasmin. Can you hear me?
I can hear you very well, Dr. Obi. How are you?
I am doing great.
I can see
and
you
how are you
and
doing?
hear you. I'm so excited. I'm doing well too. Thank you.
Excellent.
Dr. Obi, I think I should briefly say a few words about who you are, because we're very happy to have you, and I would briefly like to do that before I let you open your speech. Dr.
Please
Obi,
go ahead.
All right. Mrs. Dr. Obiageli Ezekwesili, you started your career as a consultant. We are also consultants. We are trying to build the biggest platform for the growth of African businesses through offering consulting services. And when I saw that you also started as a consultant, I was kind of excited. So many, many years ago, you started your career at Deloitte and Touche. And I think one thing that many people don't know about you is that you are the co-founder of a very important organization as well that we now all know, which is Transparency International. And you also served as the director for Africa for that organization from 1994 to 1999. But fast forward today, you are a very, very important social activist, and you also started the Bring Back Our Girls campaign in 2014 that got traction around the world and was extremely important in order to make sure that the over 300 schoolgirls that were adopted by the Islamist group Boko Haram were campaigned for to bring them back. You were a candidate for the 2019 presidential election in Nigeria and continue to be someone that is pushing for social reforms. Prior to what you do now, you were also, some years ago, the Vice President for Africa at the World Bank for several years. Dr. Obi, I am very, very happy that we have you here today. And I would like to thank you for taking the time. And I think, just like the audience, I'm very, very excited to listen to your thoughts on the topic of the session, because I think it's a very, very important one. With that, I will stop talking because you're the important one. So I will hand over to you, and I hope that you can start delivering your speech to us.
Thank you so much, Yasmin. And first, congratulations to you and your team for laying on this very important conversation. I want to acknowledge that your effort didn't just start overnight. And that even in the moments when you were still graduating from school, you started thinking big about the continent. And so I'm very excited to see how quickly you're finding your feet in the world of business. Bravo to you. I pray that you will indeed, together with your other colleagues, especially the women on your team, become those incredible, powerful, fierce African women in business that the world awaits. Now let me go to, yes, girl power, So let me go to this topic of firmly holding our place in the world as Africans. I start by saying that what got me thinking about this topic is my own reaction when the Black Lives Matter really took off in a big kind of way in recent times. And one thing that I said publicly is that Black lives would not be accorded the dignity that they deserve as just any other life here on earth until Africa holds its own in the eyes of the world. And that Africa's poor performance has been an obstacle to Africans being accorded, the black race being accorded the respect that it deserves as part of the global community. And so, leading from that, I just want to say that we do have to really x-ray the challenges and the issues that stand in the way of being accorded the kind of pride of place that we deserve, like any other race on the face of the earth. Because the truism, or rather the acceptable universal norm, is that every life should matter. And so if in 2020 we are having to impress on the world that our lives matter, we need to spend some minutes considering the things that we must do in order to firmly hold our place in the world like any other group of people. So the first thing that I then say is that Africa is not a stranger to a lot of things that have been unsavory. That have been served us in a way by the world. So whether it is the fact that the continent was ravaged by slave traders, or the fact that it was plundered by colonialists, or the fact that it was exploited during the Cold War, or even during the period of the post-colonial conflicts around the world and within the continent itself, and the many violences that we have and conflicts we have seen on our continent. All of these things paint a picture of dismal performance by the continent. But I am not here today for us to find the fault with others. I am more interested in the action that we're going to take, the taking responsibility that is necessary for us to firmly hold our place in the world. And so I then go on to say that Africa accounts for around 17% of the world's population, but we account only for 3% of the world's GDP. I mean, statistic like this is important for young Africans to connect with because it tells a story of poor performance. And so this statistic is not just highlighting the developmental challenge that the continent has, but it's also telling us that incredible opportunity awaits the continent and its people, if only we would hold our place firmly in the world. And then I go on to say that today, Africa is just about 2% of world trade. I mean, how can a continent that has every kind of resource that you can imagine, whether it's oil resources, I think 5 African countries are part of the world's top 5 oil exporters. And then you look at diamonds, you look at gold, you look at bauxite, you just think of anything. We've got natural resources, but it is very clear that something is wrong in the way that we have approached our natural resources endowment for us to be clobbered by poverty, despite all of the resources we have, and for us to only contribute 2% to global trade with all of our resources is an indication that something is misaligned. And then I go on to talk about the fact that manufacturing, in global manufacturing, where we went from, in the 70s, we even were as much as 3%. Today, we're in the region between 2 and 3%. So it's a decline. And that tells you something. It tells you that in terms of capital accumulation over the years and the process of industrialization, we have struggled. We are not where we should be. And this is important for your young population of people to understand, to know, to grasp. And then I look at the issue of employment. And in employment, only 1 in 5 workers on our continent find employment in wage economy. The rest are left in informal economy. So informality is what we have. We have low productivity service sector being the predominant economic activity on our continent. And then the rest in rural farm, and most of them being women. And when you look at the effect that this has, it has an effect of low productivity factor for our continent. So all of these things are things that we need to bear in mind. When you think of the fact that we are a continent of 1.2 billion persons, and we could be a 1.2 billion market, a large-scale market, but we cannot be called that kind of a market entirely because of the structure of productivity that I previously alluded to. So clearly, we do have challenges that we must tackle. So having said all of this, I then go on to say that for the continent, your generation has come at a very important time in history. When I look at all of these misalignments that we have between what is possible for us and what we have created, even after 60 years of independence of countries like Nigeria, which in 1960 gained its independence from Britain, or the 16 other countries that gained independence in that same year, with others following after Ghana had gained its own in 1957, it becomes clear to me that we must now get your generation to understand that you have to be the turning point generation for the continent of Africa. Through your generation, Africa can hold its own family in this world. And the reason that we can say that is that your generation is the generation of Africans that are not clobbered by colonialism. When people talk about colonialism, your generation wonders about it. It's history. It's important to know, but it is not something holding you back. There is your generation did not come into countries like Nigeria and Ghana and the rest of them, where the military rule was the norm, and all kinds of autocratic governance across the continent. That's not what you've come into. You've come into an Africa where democracy, no matter how badly practiced as yet in some places, is the norm. And so that makes for a difference in the mindset with which you look at issues of governance. You are a generation that's come into your own at a time when the idea that a demand for public accountability is to sign up to a life that could be that could disappear. That's not your own. That you now understand more and more that public accountability and the demand for it is an essential practice and nuance or a practice of value in democratic contexts. So all of the things that were liabilities, all the things that were albatrosses for the generation, my generation and the ones ahead of us, you no longer have to grapple with, because you are within a context where you are much more in a place of empowered capacity to challenge. You're in a more empowered situation to look at anyone else in the world and see them as being equal to you. And so what that does for you should be something really incredible. And I see that in sectors where you have thought of yourselves in that way, we have seen progress. So what was it that clobbered the kind of growth trajectory that should have happened so that we would have gained both economic independence at the same time as we were gaining political independence? It was the fact that the replacement mindset for the continent's governance went from being the practice of colonialism to the practice of domestic colonialism, more or less. because the governance of the continent has not entirely been governance that has produced result for the larger number. What we have had has been a political a structure and political system and political values and political culture and incentive that has meant that governance has been clobbered by a certain mindset of a continent that is not giving of its best to the matter of governance. And so there is a quote that says that the obstacle is the way. So the first thing then to say is what has become the obstacle for your generation? The obstacle for your generation is the governance of your respective countries. Without good governance of your respective countries, your best effort will still produce dismal results. Therefore, at the time that you have gathered, my speech is directed at getting you to understanding that the productivity and the outcomes of your effort are being hindered by the quality, the still low quality of governance across the continent. And therefore, you cannot allow your individual random successes to stand in the way of your understanding that the continent should be doing much, much better than it is currently doing. For between 2000 and until the global financial economic crisis of the 2009 to about 2013-14, you could see that the continent changed trajectory and began to grow at an average of 5%. But 5% growth is still low compared to the kind of problems that the continent must tackle. In a continent where almost half of the population is in the classification of extreme poverty, you cannot afford to be triumphalist about 5% average growth. But even that 5% average growth is no longer what you have. Before COVID, the growth of the continent was a low 2.8% or thereabout. And it has been on these low levels in the last couple of years before 2019, 2020 set in. So what we need to consider what your generation needs to consider is whether you want your individual success so that you are the cock that crows at dawn, the single cock that crows at dawn, or you want collective success that enables as many Africans to be lifted out of poverty and for Africa to become a prosperous, stable, and cohesive society. So to that extent, therefore, my principal message to you as you gather is that being in business is a very important direction for your population of young people, who, by the way, constitute more than 20% of the global youth population. It is a very important thing for you to do. But I dare say to you that you have to be much more than business people who are doing well in your chosen fields. You must become Africans that are interested in removing that obstacle that stands in the way of better performance of the continent. Because when the continent becomes prosperous, it would have very important spillover effect on the way that the Black race is considered around the world. When the continent looks at the 21st century, your generation must say that Africa can claim the 21st century. And the good thing about making such a declaration amongst your population, your segment of our population, is that with COVID, everyone needs to return to the table. And if everyone needs to return to the writing table as countries, in order to look again at what kind of world do they want to play in. And as the world begins to look at post-COVID direction, I dare say that it becomes an opportunity for your segment of the African population to simply stop and say, the obstacle is the way. If the obstacle is the way, governance is the key obstacle, and every kind of economic study has shown it, that even if we fixed all the infrastructure and got everything right, if we don't improve governance on our continent, we still would not be a continent that produces economic well-being for the largest of our numbers. So to that extent, Yasmin and colleagues, I want to state that a key aspect of your role becomes the necessary reform and the structural change of political culture and political governance on the continent. Africa must be governed by the best of Africans. The best can not only be in business. The best of Africans must provide African public leadership. To that extent, therefore, a critical agenda must be fixing Africa's political culture and its outcomes. When that happens, then we would see how quickly the matter of economic prosperity, human development, improvements, a critical infrastructure, institutions building, and all other things that lead to equitable, inclusive growth can happen on our continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for sharing these wise words. We haven't met in 5 years, but from our last meeting, I remember the frank and honest wisdom from you, and you have not disappointed on that this time. I hope you can hear me.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, great, you can hear me. So there are a lot of important things that you said, and I think that we need to unpack these. You made mention of our women's team leading Africa Foresight Group. So since you mentioned, I think it's good to just have one of them join me. Rashida Seshi is also part of our management team at the Africa Foresight Group and was also very keen to be part of the Q&A with you. Rashida, maybe you can beat her.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Obi, for joining us today. Like Yasmin said, it's really a pleasure to get you to attend on this event. There are so many young women that are joining this event through social media, wanting to listen to what you have to say. And I was thinking, as a woman in business, you are one of the very few that have achieved tremendous success across the 3 triangle, they say: family, career, pursuing a goal beyond a lifetime. And I would just like to know, what advice can you give us? You said something about claiming the decade, and you have been able to do that by starting up the Transparency International. This is something that has gone on to change our world and will continue to do so. So before I go off and start talking too much, I would just like to know what your advice is for young women in conquering those 3 triangles while trying to seize the decade.
Dr. Obi, can you hear us?
Okay, don't seize the decade. I said you must seize the century. I want you to claim the 21st century for the continent.
Yes.
The decade is not enough. It won't solve our problems for you
Absolutely.
to claim just a decade. On the advice that I would give to you, I think that the key is to be a purposeful human being. You must be purposeful. You cannot afford to simply go with the wind. Every one of you must certainly look at themselves almost as an entity. If you are an entity, you have to say to yourself, what kind of purpose should this entity be serving the world? Once you are able to unpack, using the word of Yasmin, the entity, what would happen is that you would see your many realities as a woman, and you can optimize on all of your realities. Your first reality is that you may be a woman, but you're first and foremost a human being, unique in your own being, and therefore with your talents that you have come into the world. And those your talents are available to be maximized. And so you would invest in the things that enable you be the best in your unique area of passion and talent that you choose to be as a human being, equivalent to any other human being, male or female, here on earth. And then you look at your other realities. Your other realities, your reality as a daughter, the child of two persons who are your parents. You have to optimize what a daughter should be. In that case, you carry the code of the two parents that brought you into life, and they form a piece of history for you. Optimize everything, the learning that is possible through them. You'll be shocked at how much wisdom comes from just talking to your parents and gleaning some of the ideas, some of the failings, some of the successes that can help you to shape a future. Your reality as a sibling. You know, I said to the girls especially, I said to parents especially, that for the girl child, the reality as a sibling is one that we must help them perform well. When a girl child as a sibling is made to understand her leadership possibilities in those years of growing up, she's already running the boardroom in her father's house by being able to get her siblings to do things, to persuade them, to coax them, as the case may be. You know, so we need to make sure that you understand that your reality as a wife, your reality as a mother, all of these realities have their specific needs. When you look at it in totality, what you should be able to do is to say to yourself, all of these are my realities, and I'm going to give my best to each of them. I'm not going to trade off one for the other. And I'm going to find the knowledge, I'm going to find the skills, I'm going to find the competencies, find the partnerships, find the support systems that would enable me activate each of these realities and make the best out of them.
And of course, given that we are 3 women building Africa Foresight Group into a big platform to elevate more companies into global championship, we of course feel very touched by a lot of the things you're saying. I was also very touched earlier when we were talking about what other ages or historical ages post-colonialism Africa has come from, and the fact that we sometimes forget how appreciative we have to be of now being in some state of democracy, even if maybe it can be debated where it's working well or not. My father was a migrant from Ghana that left Ghana to go to Germany at the age of 23. And the whole time I grew up, he was telling me about these dark ages and how bad it was. So when I came back here and started a company that then started becoming a bigger platform that I'm building together with 2 amazing women, I always kept that in mind, but also had the strong conviction that it must be possible to change whatever he has experienced. I think that the challenge sometimes, and this is a question for you, Dr. Obi, the challenge sometimes is, as business leaders, we have a very, very strong conviction that we need to contribute to growth, economic success, and making sure that we create jobs. And you were talking earlier about individual successes. Individual successes are very, very real for business leaders because sometimes they're also the quicker successes, and they're the successes that you're able to tangibly see when you put work in. You were now talking about how we also have to make sure we take ownership of governance. Governance sometimes for business leaders in the African context as well seems to be something that is a bigger vehicle to deal with, where it's also hard to find a starting point. So my question to you really is, looking that we have a community here of business leaders from across the continent and looking at what we're trying to achieve with Africa Foresight Group, building a platform for businesses to grow faster, what can we really do as business leaders to contribute to establishing a good governance framework in Africa that also unlocks our tremendous potential you were talking about? What can we do?
I think that you should act more and more as groups of businesses. Mm-hmm. The idea that you can befriend the president or at night and get some concession from the president so that your own little business will become great. Look, you're just going to be a little big business in Ghana or in Nigeria, when, as a matter of fact, you should be competing with the rest of the world. So the more that you act as industry players, you act as sectoral players, the more that you coalesce your effort so that you invest in issues of policies, public policy, you launch research into latest ideas that would enable higher productivity of your sector and the barriers to doing business in the country that will need to be removed by government. You have a voice on poor investment culture of government and how it retards your capacity to have low-cost environment so that you can be globally competitive. The more that you can do things that border around matter of policy entrepreneurship, working even with think tanks. Some of you should, invest in think tanks. Get think tanks to invest in real research. Think of it this way. In the next 10, 15, 20 years at the maximum, the digital economy will be 20% of global GDP. How is the African business environment preparing for this? How are they getting on the back of government and saying, these are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things that must be done by a certain date so that we don't fall way behind all over again as the world goes digital economy? So you can't just celebrate your individual success and do a lot of what I call the incestuous relationship between business and government, so that people, a few networked corrupt individuals in private sector and public sector are having a good time, and to the utter neglect of the rest of society. It's not a sustainable model. It isn't. So you have to change that and know how to act more and more as industry grows.
That's an important
and use
point.
your voice. Use your voice. The business world has a voice. Stop swallowing up your voice because you are afraid of what government will do. The more that you would act together, the less the risk of being considered a single enemy of government. You leave that one to individuals like me who don't care, who considers me an enemy. I have my voice and I must use my voice for the improvement of the society that I live in, the continent that I belong to. But businesses, if you're afraid that they can come after you, then act as industry group and be very strong in your opinion and let it be based on evidence. So that's why I said a lot of research that gives evidence as to what works, what does not work. Some of you are sitting in environments where terrible policies that are hindering you are daily being done, and you just keep quiet and you say, we're managing. How can you be managing? It is only because you are some of you are managing because there is this whole, this parasitic relationship that exists, means that some of you are also benefiting from the poor governance. Some businesses benefit from the bureaucratic mess that the continent has to deal with. Businesses benefit from policy failures and policy, policy inconsistencies, so you are comfortable with it. Don't be comfortable with it. You should be big businesses. And by the way, the AFCTA is your greatest opportunity now. It means that you can act with businesses across boundaries and you can work together to be formidable voice. You've got the capital behind you. Use your voice. Business on the continent cannot ignore this obstacle that is governance.
Much, Dr. Obi. I think this is very powerful, and you're setting an important tone for this conference that we need to unpack more, because it's important that we unite and build industry bodies and build think tanks and really become an industry instead of just individual players and unite the private sector. And I hope that we can contribute something to that with what we're doing here. Rashida has one more question for you, because we need to make sure we benefit as much as possible from your wisdom before you have to go. Afterwards, I will have a little surprise for you before you leave us. But I will first let Rashida ask you another question, and then we will proceed to that.
Thank you, Yasmin. Dr. Obi, I liked what you said about working in groups. We know that, especially in this generation, we really enjoy hearing our own voices, especially on social media. It's almost as if we debate on issues just because we want to hear the sound of our own voices and neglect what it takes to actually build power and influence by coming together as a group. And I was wondering, given your own experiences, how would you advise that we take the next step towards building a group that can come together and start to influence government and business landscape in Africa so that we can move forward and truly become global champions?
I think you should do, it is time for a group like yours to partner. I normally say that partnership is the biggest resource that an individual, a corporation, even a government can have. Partnership. Partnership is your greatest resource. Finance is not the most important of resources that you need. In fact, in the order of importance, I put partnership ahead of knowledge and then finance. So it's partnership, knowledge, and finance that you need. Now, with this, you can do a mapping of the various groups and the various voices, and you can, map the different sectors on the continent, emerging sectors continent. And by the way, the continent sectors that are really, a source of great passion and delight for me are the talent-based sectors. So look at what's going on with technology on our continent. Our young ones, my goodness, I love them. I love what they are doing with technology. I love how they are innovating. I love how they are showing that this particular revolution, technology revolution, that Africa was well aware of and participating in, that we're not slacking in it. We're not laggards in it. Innovation is coming in technology from our continent. Or you look at the sector, the creative sector. Just look at what Africans are doing in the creative sector. I mean, it's unbelievable. Just even take those two sectors and make those two sectors an umbrella set of sectors that are working together to demand better governance, better policies, the right kinds of institutions, the right kinds of public investment that would precede private sector investment. My goodness, the continent stands a chance by 2050, even before 2050, of doubling its current 2.5 trillion GDP. That's not a good GDP to have. We're 1.1 billion people continent. We should optimize much more than we're doing. And by the way, my plug is for you to start hugely with the women. The women are finding their voice in such an incredible way. And so give as much time as possible to building them into joined up networks. We need a women's movement on our continent. We need women's movement, not little women's group movement. Basically using data to show that this continent has no reason to have women performing at very low productivity levels. And because the fact that we know is that the more that the women are part of economic participation on the continent, the doubling and a half of the continent's productivity will happen. So young people, women, technology, creativity, everything that's related to talent, basically is different from what you inherited. What you inherited is an obsession of our political class for natural resources, for natural endowment, because it offers opportunity for easy money, most of which is badly invested or badly used, or in fact stolen.
That was powerful. I feel energized. I feel charged. When you talk about talent, that's everything AFG is doing. So I'm very happy to know that we're on the right track and happy to know that someone like you supports us. It's amazing. Thank you very much, Dr. Obi.
I think we need to ask Dr. Obi to become our patron. Yes. No, I'm serious.
You've always disturbed me. You've always disturbed me, Yasmin. I never get peace from you.
I don't know how to reach you. You are very prominent, and there are a lot of people between the two of us. But I mean, we are going to come to Abuja, and hopefully we can sit down with you, because what you said
I'm
is
enormously
important.
proud of you. I'm enormously proud of you. I'm proud of your passion, and I don't want you to stop. Don't, I mean, and, when people say to you, slow down, tell them there's no place to slow down. All right. The number of children who are dying when they should not die before the age of 1, before the age of 5, women still dying in, giving birth, the number of out of school children, the unemployment level on our continent because of poor skills of young people. Nobody should be slowing down. We should all be we should be congenitally impatient in our optimism. I mean, I'm desperately impatient in optimism. I am optimistic about the continent, but I am impatient about the slow pace at which we are getting to development. We need to double up. And post-COVID agenda should be an agenda that gets us making sure that we have our best in public leadership. Because politics is undermining business, politics is undermining civil society, politics is undermining citizens, politics is undermining governance. If we don't fix politics on our continent, we can't become all that we are wired to become. And that's when we miss the opportunity that we should have to really stamp clearly that we've taken our rightful place in the world. You are the ones that will do it. Don't fail. Don't fail.
We promise we won't. We will not fail. And that's why we put together this program, because we want to make sure that we are recognized globally for our excellence as Africans, and that we showcase that. And we will make sure that this is the century to achieve that. Dr. Obi, we would like to appreciate you. And I have to go back a little bit in time now, because the first time I met you, I mentioned briefly earlier, was 5 years ago, and with people like you who are, conquering the world and know so many important people. You never know whether they remember, but it sounds like you do remember. We had you join us for a talk where you inspired more than 500 young Africans. And what I was so inspired by back then, when I met you for the first time and saw you talk, was how within 5 minutes, you get people's heads straight and open up the world to them. I think every time I see you somewhere, share your thoughts, after you are done, people think about the world differently. You've done that again today. So because it's been pretty exactly 5 years since we have last interacted, and because this is still so powerful, we wanted to recognize that. For us, all you have done and what you do with sharing thoughts like you did today, getting our heads straight and looking to achieve the right goals, is extremely important. And it's nearly like, not nearly, it is like being a guiding light. Because often, as you said, we focus on small successes and we lose the big picture, and we stop thinking about what the big goal is that we want to achieve, and also how we do that purposefully. So we decided to recognize you with an award. Now I know that you probably have quite a few awards in your living room and wherever else in your house already and in your office, but we hope that this one is going to come with a special memory. We decided to literally call it the Guiding Light Award, because when we talked about you in our team, we said that you are someone who is a guiding light to us. And as such, there would be no other way to call this award in order to really honor what it's supposed to stand for. Now, we would normally want to give this to you in person, but unfortunately that's not possible right now, because we're all busy using COVID-19 to rethink the future and we can't meet. So we have to find a time where we invite ourselves to your house to bring it to you personally in Abuja. For now, we just have a photograph that we are now quickly going to show, so you can at least see the award on screen. It has your name on it and says Guiding Light Award, and it also says Inaugural Guiding Light Award, because it's the first time we are doing this. And we said that ideally, we continue to find African leaders like you who speak truth to power, and hopefully in subsequent years are able to live up to the expectations that you have set, so that it becomes a series that was started with giving this to you. So that's why it's called Inaugural. And yes, I hope that we can bring it to you sometime soon, depending on how our airports are treating us. But I, of course, want to give you the opportunity to say a few words to this, and we hope that you are happy about the recognition.
You know, Yasmin, I am taken by surprise, and I want to thank you and your team for this award. I get written to accept all kinds of awards, and I often reject quite a number of them because I kind of think to myself, I really don't need this award. And I also don't want a culture where we bastardize awards on the continent. I really think that an award has to be meaningful for me to accept it. I want you to know that I consider this award very meaningful. The fact that I look at the younger generation and I'm so excited. I am really looking forward to this continent's greatness because you are. The continent will become because you people are going to make it happen with the little kinds of counsel that people like me can provide to you. Let me end on the note that, you know, what you're trying to do is about mindset change. Mindset change is fundamental to everything that I spoke about on the fact that your own generation of Africans can take on the matter of governance, on the matter of business. I am an absolute sucker for business, for economic growth that is led by business. I will do anything to see very good policies to make businesses grow. That's where our hope lies. So you're doing a lot of mindset change. Continue in that regard. The most important and significant thing that you can achieve with what you're doing is to indeed get a scale. At scale, people who are thinking of value-driven businesses, value-based public leadership, value-based home leadership, community leadership. It has to be anchored on values because ultimately, values that are lasting can determine how far societies will go. Thank you so very much for the award. I am delighted to receive it.
Dr. Obi, thank you so much. We were so happy to see you, even though it's just on screen. And you didn't say much about our self-invitation to your house, but I'm sure we can ask your team about
You're coming.
that.
You're definitely coming. When the airports are fully open, you should come.
Perfect. No, I mean, I think we both really appreciate what you have shared today, and we appreciate your time. We know that your time is very precious, and we appreciate that you felt that it was important to be here. And we are looking forward to engaging further with you, and we will make sure that we pick some out of the wisdom you've shared today and unpack it in the course of this conference.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, Dr. Obi. Wow.
Wow.
Well, we have a lot more work to do over the next 2 years now that Dr. Obi has spoken.
Yes. One thing I can say is I always knew that Dr. Obi was a powerful speaker, and I respect her as a leader and as a thought leader especially, but I did not expect to feel as charged as I do now. I don't know about you, Yasmin, but I feel ready to conquer the world.
I do too, and this is what it's all about. We are here to build global championship when it comes to African businesses, and that's what we have to do. And I think Dr. Obi said some really important things, especially that it starts with mindset. Interestingly, Aliko Dangote said the same thing.
Yes. And one other thing is, and it's something I've heard before, the need to form partnerships. When we talk about African businesses and growth, we often talk about the lack of access to finance. But Dr. Obi said something that was very important, which is beyond finances, we need to build partnerships because you need to achieve the critical skill to stand for something, especially when you're going, not against, but trying to fight the power, so to speak.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think partnership is the key here, especially if we want to make things like the African Continental Free Trade Agreement a success opportunity for all of us.
Yes.
We are going to take about a 10-minute break, and then we will be back with our next session. And it's actually a nice way to lead over to the next session, because Dr. Obi and Alhaji Aliko Dangote have said a lot about making sure that we set high goals and making sure that we put Africa onto the map globally and showing us that it's actually possible. But we also need to look at where we are now. Often the understanding is that we don't have that many African businesses that are as successful yet.
Yeah.
But Africa Foresight Group over the years has realized that that's not true, because actually there are a lot of very exciting African companies on the continent that have a lot of potential to become the next set of Dangote Group one day. And we would like to make sure that there's more visibility around that. So the Hidden Champions Initiative, African Hidden Champions Initiative, is supposed to become a platform that unites businesses that are mature, successful in their home markets, and quietly conquering the world, are being put together centrally and being featured when it comes to their stories. So in 10 minutes, or a little less now I think, we will have the chance at 1:45 p.m. UK to unpack that further, learn more about the African Hidden Champions Initiative, why it's so important to us, and also just meet some companies that we think are hidden champions.
Absolutely.
See you in a few minutes.
See
Thank
you.
you all for joining.